Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys a quick tutorial on how to solve the 5x5 with the Yao method. So let's get right into this. Now this method is not to be confused with the Yao 5 method, which is something that you should check out up here. Chris Olsen made a really good video about this a long time ago. If you know who Chris Olsen is, shout out to you, you're an OG. The Yao 5 method is slightly different, but we are going to be focusing on the Yao method, which is also the most commonly used method on the 4x4. I actually recommend switching to Yao for all big cubes. Do not quote me from 4 years ago when I used to say that Redux is the best. I disagree now. But yeah, it's basically the Yao method on 4x4 extended to 5x5. But what you're going to be learning in this video is how to actually implement it on the 5x5 in a good way. So for this to work, I would recommend doing whatever I tell you now on the 4x4 first, in case you use Redux for the 4x4. So let me know, I can make a 4x4 Yao tutorial as well, but let's go straight to 5x5, because honestly, if you understand the 5x5 one, you can do it for all big cubes. So let's get this cube all scrambled up now. Alright, so first an overview of the method before we actually dive into it. The first thing you want to do is make the first two centers. So that's the first step of Yao. Even on, well, any cube that you do Yao on, like the Yao method on, it's going to be that for the first two steps. So you make the first two centers, and once you do that, the next step is to make the first three cross edges. So this could be the hardest step of Yao, honestly, because it's just hard to like find pieces. But yeah, you make the first three cross edges and then you make the last four centers. So don't worry, I'm going to show you exactly how each of these steps is done. Yeah, in fact, you can use the video chapters to navigate to whatever part you want to see if you already know a few parts. But anyway, then you make the last cross edge. So once that's done, you'll have your cross done. That's a big part of what Yao is about. And then you make your last 8 edges. So that could be split up into your first 4 edges and then your last 4 edges. So yeah, once you do your first 4 edges, you'll be left with something like this. And once you do your last 2 edges, you will end up with a 3x3. So this is now reduced, but now the cross is done. That is the benefit of Yao, and we will be coming back to that to hit on exactly what's important in the last step before you hit that. So yeah, 3x3 stage is obviously nothing crazy, but yeah, that is the overview of the method. So now let's jump into how you should actually approach solving the 5x5 with the Yao method. So going back, now the first step is to make the first two centers. Now ideally you want to pick the colors that you're comfortable doing your cross on. If you're color neutral, that's great, you can pick any color, but I go with white or yellow. So in this case, I noticed that yellow is kind of better, and the reason for that is you have this bar, you have this bar. So what's really important for first two centers is you look for the patterns that make this easier. So the patterns to look for are things like 2x1 bars or even 3x1 bars if you find them, or 2x2 blocks. That would be super ideal. In fact, that's like the nicest way to pair pieces. So for example, here what I'm going to do is I see this edge, I see these two 2x1s, and I could do something like, for example, I'm going to leave this here because I want to pair it with these two corners. So in my inspection, I'm going to see basically all 9 of my yellow pieces. I'm going to pair this first to make a 2x2. And then that brought this down. So I can do something like that to make the 2x3. And then pair this and put it in. So that's the first center. And then next center, something similar. So this is another really nice pattern. And what I really recommend for this stage is you want to look for these patterns by doing more slow solves. So like do untimed solves and look for, like for example, I know if I have a corner that's obliquely attached to 2x1, I know that I can put another edge like that. It's very cool. And yeah, you just look for patterns like this. So again, I see that, and then the last 3x1, just insert that. So first two centers is all about finding the right patterns and finding out which method of pairing suits which solve. In this particular solve, we noticed that 1x2s were the best way to go about it, and then building 2x2s, 2x3s, and then finally the 3x3 center. So again, for first two centers, you want to look for methods of pairing and exactly what patterns you need to find. Naturally, I'm assuming you know how to solve centers on a 4x4 because that is a prerequisite. Like, I mean, I would recommend learning 4x4 before you do 5x5. So once you do that, now comes the really important stage of Yao. This is the part that makes Yao hard. The part that makes Yao hard is the first 3 cross edges. Now, this is your next step in the Yao process, and for me, that's going to be the white cross edges. You could also do yellow, but what I recommend is if you're right-handed, you should do them on the left. And if you're left-handed, you should do them on the right. The reason for this is this step involves a lot of 3R wide and 2R wide moves. And the reason for that is because you need to pair these in these 4 layers. And the reason for that is because you need to insert them into your left layer. So yeah, I'd recommend doing the cross on like the left side if you're right-handed, and I am, so I'm going to go ahead with that. So the first thing I notice here is I try and find at least 2 pieces that I can, match up, like this white-red couple of pieces, for example. And I see the third piece is down here. So what you want to try doing is, the simplest way to do this, for example, would be putting this up here and then doing something like that. Now that's not the most efficient way. What I would have done in the solve is put this back here and then paired this and brought it down. So like I would have paired it in the back and inserted it like that. But in this case, I'm just trying to be simple. So yeah, I would put this in, and then remember, to do Yao, you need to know the color scheme for at least 2 adjacent or 3 adjacent colors. So I mean, ideally you can just do it for all, it's not that hard. But yeah, then I see green. I saw the white green here and I see a white green here. And when I rotate like this, I also see the white green here. So I'd probably do something like this. And that pairs white green, and I would put it in here because I know it goes below red and when white is on the left. And then I see white blue here, these 2 pieces. So I can just do that. And I see the third white blue as I'm pairing that. So we can do something like that. Now notice I was using both left and right moves here. The reason for that is if I use purely right moves, I'll have to rotate a lot. And at this stage, I'm free to use the left F moves as I wish, essentially. The truly important part of first 3 cross edges is something like, for example, if I solve green here, instead of doing this, it's probably better to do something like this. So the difference there is that when I do this, I end up with the empty slot, which I really want on top most of the times because I can do RU moves, I can spam those for centers. And when you do it this way, you don't end up with that. So instead, if you do it this way, now you end up with the empty slot on top. So yeah, get good at back inserts, and remember that look ahead is the most important part of first 3 cross edges without a doubt. So understanding how pieces move with respect to other pieces, the piece dynamics of these 3 or any 3 cross edges that you are solving is really important, and I would really recommend doing more slow solves to practice this. In fact, this is something even I should do to get faster, because this is the step that you're most prone to pausing on, and pauses really kill your big cube solves. So that's what I would say for this. That's the first 3 cross edges. So I hope, it's all really intuitive. There's no algorithms, there's nothing crazy going on here. If you do 4x4, that's exactly how it works. Then your next step is to solve the last 4 centers. The difference between the redux and this now is that you have 3 edges already solved. And this is the real benefit of Yao, because this last slot is enough to solve the last 4 centers. In my honest opinion, I think this is better than Redux because it doesn't slow you down as much as you think to use this last slot to pair things. Now, when I say that, I mean, this is the only way we can turn the U layer. Like if I want to do this, I can't do it because of that. So I have to do something like this. So I can't disturb a solved edge in any way. What that entails is that it creates a lot of wide R moves, even in the 4 wide R, like 4R wide or 3R wide or 2R wide. Like you may have any of these wide moves, and that's really important to understand because as a right-handed person, it's something like that. So you can kind of see the finger tricks that I'm doing here. I'm not solving anything, I'm just showing you like how the finger tricks work. Okay, for example, now that I have this, I know I can pair this corner with the center and put it in here really easily with RU R prime. But now when I want to move these to the left, this entire 2x3 to the left side, that's going to create an issue because I can't do this. Instead, I'll have to do something like this. And that is accomplished much easier when done with a 4R wide prime. So you can see how that kind of makes sense. It's really important to get used to the 4R wide, 3R wide and 2R wide moves. But yeah, in general, they are just lefty moves, so it's not really that hard to do lefty moves like this. But you could also get more comfortable with that. Then once you get comfortable with that, it's really easy. So now I see this green corner here with the 2 green the joint with centers here, of course. The green corner center with the edge and the other center. So I'll pair it like that, insert it, and then I have a nice red 2x2 here. So I just pair another one to make a 2x3. And just to kind of show you what I did there, I had to move this to the left, and then I had to insert it here. But I can't just do R prime FR because I would break the blue. So I had to do something like L R prime FR, and what's improving on that is instead of L, I can do R prime wide R U wide R prime R. And I know it seems like so much worse, but that's how fast it is. In all honesty, I don't think of these moves as 4R wide and 4R wide primes. I just meant that because your finger tricks might go in that direction if you're right-handed. So then I see this and this. Again, if I want to get this corner up here, I can't just do this, it'll disturb the blue. So I get the empty slot, then do this, get it back. And then the way I would insert this down here is something like this. Very simple. And remember, as long as you have the empty slot here, you can do whatever you want with the up layer. And that is the whole essence of using this empty slot for the last 4 centers of Yao. So then I see this T shape, I'm just going to pair this edge with the T. And I'll try and fix as much as I can before I move the empty slot back up. And once I do that, I just have this case, which is really easy. Now we're done with our essentially our last 4 centers, because all that's left is this. But remember, you don't have to make this last slice move, because you could in fact use it while just pairing your edges, or you don't even have to fix it at all, because all I need to do now is pair this edge, and I just kind of fast forwarded myself there. I forgot I have to explain what I'm doing. So the last cross edge, I would say, is one of the tougher parts of the solve as well, along with the first 3 cross edges. The cross edges are just hard, because even for the last cross edge, in this case I was lucky that it was right here and I just had to insert it. All 3 pieces were in my field of view, but sometimes you'll have pieces back here, sometimes you'll leave pieces in here, you'll have pieces even solved sometimes, and that's not always the best case. So what you want to do for cross edges is kind of take a moment to search for your 3 pieces, 1, 2, 3, and then go into your solution. So the solution is the same as 4x4, so I would just insert this here, do a slice, flip, slice here to pair it. And now to insert it, I see a lot of people doing stuff like removing it and then, like something like that. But really what I'd recommend is, of course, you can't just put the cross piece in like this, you destroy the centers. So what I'd recommend is doing, like, if it's a case like this, doing something like R prime, F prime, RF. Like that just inserts it very easily. And the reason this is better is because you're reducing your move count and you're keeping these pieces like intact. So you can look ahead better to your next step. In fact, I already see yellow, red here. Last cross edge is a very tough step, a lot of state possibilities for the edges, but the way you deal with the pieces and the insertions are the most important part of the step. Now, we move on to the last 8 edges. So what I'll say here is the first 4 edges are pretty much the same as 4x4, so I'm not going to really give too much importance on it. You have all the edges on top and in these layers, so like you don't even have to look at the bottom. That's the benefit over Redux. So yeah, pairing your last few, especially your last 4 edges, is something that you can pretty much spam TPS on, because look ahead is so easy. In fact, I'm done. So really easy to pair I should have said first 4 edges actually. This is not the last 4, it's the last 8. Really easy to pair the first 4, and then I would recommend doing a small trigger. So this trigger is optional, but it is a really nice setup that I have myself seen a lot of top solvers use. So there's many variations of it, but the one I like the most is R prime, U prime, R2, U prime, R prime, and then rotating. So what this does is it helps you see all 4 of your unsolved edge slots in the same frame. And that helps you plan your cycles much quicker, because as opposed to this, it's much harder to see all your cycles, because like there's 2 edge slots in the back. So when I do this and I rotate, I immediately have a vision of everything I have. So it really helps me plan much better. In fact, here I would probably insert this first, like that, and do a slice, flip, slice, like that. So that's a paired edge. And yeah, remember, you want to dive deeper into cycles here, because cycles are really going to help you, save moves and pair things more efficiently. So then I would probably insert this while removing that, and then I can do something like this, remove that, do that. And then lastly, I can pair these 2 like that, and then do that. And then that gives me my last 2 edge case. So remember, this is basically the same as 4x4 like so far, except you don't really do the R prime, like R prime, U prime, R2, U prime, R prime trigger on 4x4, because you do 3-2-3 edge pairing on 4x4. But 3-2-3 doesn't work on 5x5 because there's another layer of complexity. So it's not as simple as doing 3-2-3. Moving on, this is the last 2 edges. So you can kind of break up the last 4 edges into doing a cycle or 2 and then the last 2 edges. And hopefully you don't get a last 2 edge case that's bad, because then you can just do cycles and finish off your last 4 edges. But yeah, in this case, we have a last 2 edge case. Now, there's a couple of things I'd recommend here. You can just learn all the last 2 edge algorithms. I personally find that there's patterns to learning all of them, so they're not too hard to learn. In fact, you should check out this video of mine where I go over all of my last 2 edge algorithms, and I really recommend learning them. It's a very old video, so I might sound like suspicious, but yeah, you should just check it out if you can. If not, just learn the parity algorithm. It's the exact same as 4x4. So on 4x4, the OLL parity algorithm, it's basically the same thing. Except here, okay, I might have to set up parity to show you. But also, like, this is a nice last 2 edge case, for example. It's that simple. So yeah, last 2 edges is fun. But let's show you a parity alg. So I'll just show it on the top edge. It doesn't really matter. So this is for those of you that want to see how the parity alg works on the 5x5. So here you'll have 3, right? You'll have a flipped case with the middle edge, and that's parity. So what you do here is, it's the same alg as 4x4. If you use this OLL parity alg, it's easy. If you use the other one, you can just do that as well. But yeah, I just use this one. It's R U2 X, R U2, R U2, R prime U2, L U2, R prime U2, R U2, R prime U2, R prime. It's not exactly the same because the moves are the same, but the number of layers you take with the wide R's is different. So here you do R U2, X, R U2, R U2. And then 3 wide R prime U2, L U2, R prime U2, R U2, R prime U2, R prime. So everything else is the same, but at that one point where you do the R prime, you do 3 wide R prime instead of just the 2, which is what it is on 4x4. So this is the end of the yaw abduction stage, and you have your cross solved. Now, it is extremely important, and this is something you will learn when you start doing yaw, even on 4x4, that you make the transition from your last 2 edges to your 3x3 stage pauseless and seamless. And the reason this is really important is because this is the entire point of doing yaw. It's that you can jump straight into your F2L. You don't have to look for cross pieces at all. And it's much easier to look for F2L pieces because you don't have like an issue with pairing. Like you've already paired your edges, so you know where certain edges are. So I would recommend when you're doing your last 2 edge algorithm, or you're just doing your last 2 edges in general, look for your first F2L pair. And this is something you have to do without fail, because this is what makes yaw worth it. This is the strongest suit of yaw. Your cross is solved. Look for the first pair during your last 2 edges. Do not hesitate. Do not wait. And anyway, 3x3 stage, I am probably not too qualified to give a walkthrough on this, but yeah, just do F2L, guys, and then just do OLL. You won't get parity because it's an odd ordered cube, which is great. But yeah, that brings me to the end. So I hope this tutorial was helpful to you. Again, some things to remember are your first 3 cross edges, you need to have really good look ahead, and you can slow down your turning there because this is where you need to be smooth and insert pieces well. Try and insert pieces in the back where you can, and that applies to actually every part of every cube ever. Like back inserts are always great because they improve your look ahead for the rest of the solve. And again, first 2 centers pretty obvious, like just look for patterns that you can find for pairing center pieces. And then your last 4 centers, remember the slot on your left is your holy grail essentially. It is what you use for everything. So get used to doing L moves or wide R moves, whichever ones you prefer calling them, and get used to pairing your centers while manipulating the location of that empty slot. And I'll leave like a speed solve at the end of this video so you can just watch how I do these steps. Apart from that, yeah, your last cross edge is a tough step. You need to find the pieces, but you know, once you find them, it's easy. So in your last 8 edges, I would say the first 4 edges are super easy. The last 4 edges, once you do the trigger, I would say they're easy because this you kind of set up everything in your frame of reference point of view. So yeah, I would recommend doing the trigger setup, and yeah, you can just really easily pair the edges from there. Get used to cycles, get used to parity, get used to learning how to manipulate certain pieces through cycles. I wasn't able to show that during my tutorial because the solve it only had like 1 or 2 cycles for 2 edges, which is really bad. Like ideally you'd have a better case where you can do more cycles, but maybe I just didn't find it. That's on me. That is all. After that, just remember your transition to 3x3 stage has got to be flawless. It is something that you should work on. It is something that you should activate in your brain when you're on your last 2 edges, and I really recommend pushing forward with that. That is all for this video. Do let me know if you do not know the yaw method at all. Then I'll make a tutorial for 4x4 because that might be easier to grasp because there's fewer patterns to recognize, there's fewer pieces to track, and overall that uses a different edge pairing method. It's called 3-2-3, which we don't use on 5x5, 6x6 or 7x7. So 3-2-3 is a much nicer way to do yaw, and that's why 4x4 yaw is like ubiquitous. Like everyone does yaw on 4x4, but not everyone does yaw on the bigger cubes. So yeah, let me know if you want me to make that tutorial. I'll be really happy to. And that is all for today's video. Do subscribe to the channel if you found this helpful, and share this video as much as you can. At the end of the day, that is my goal with these videos, is to reach as many people as possible. So yeah, please hit like on the video, hit subscribe, and share it with the people you think would benefit the most from it. And I will see you in the next one. Do drop your comments in the comment section below, and yeah, take care and peace.